Hello, everybody. Welcome to Nuclear Heat. The name of this week's show is Professional Wrestling. Who are these guys? And last week, the topic of discussion was how the wrestling shows rated as television shows. Today, I'm going to break that down a little bit more into the lack of characters, the lack of storylines, and why that is happening. Before I get started, let me say you could follow me 6 days a week, VinceRussoBrand.com, where I do video podcasting just like this, new content 6 days every week. We have 2 new interviews up every week. This week, we had cheerleader Melissa, who's just starting with Lucha Underground, and also the great Pete Gas from the Main Street Posse back in the Attitude Era. So that's VinceRussoBrand.com. I got to get that business out of the way. Now, listen, I want to say this. I am very proud to say that between Monday and Wednesday of this week, I watched every wrestling show. I watched Monday Night Raw on Monday. I watched Lucha Underground on Wednesday. I watched NXT about 2:30 this morning, and I also watched Impact. So I sat back and I really observed the scene as it pertains to all companies in wrestling. And also, before I get started, let me again say this. When I do these podcasts, I am looking at wrestling as a business because at the end of the day, that's what it is. And the more viable the wrestling programming is to the networks, the more popular that wrestling is once again going to be. And that is my goal, to get the fan base back. Listen, it's a no-brainer. I'm in the wrestling business. Me doing this broadcast for Wrestling Inc., I'm in the wrestling business. Wrestling Inc. is in the wrestling business. Vince Russo brand is in the wrestling business. If the wrestling business thrives, we make out. So it does me no good to come on here every week, week after week after week after week, and bury wrestling. Because what I'm doing is I'm not burying it. I'm trying to tell them the things that they need to do differently in order to bring the masses back. Listen, man, I'm a baseball fan. I'm a San Francisco Giant fanatic. I got 1,000 bobbleheads of the Giant on my desk. If the Giants were losing every day, it would not bring me great joy to come on here and tell you the Giants stink. Well, it's the same as wrestling. I'm a wrestling fan. It doesn't bring me joy to come on here and say wrestling is subpar at best. That's not the opinion of Vince Russo. That is the facts of the ratings. And let me point out, last week when WWE audience went up to 4 million people and the rating went up to a 2.9, I clearly stated I felt the main reasons were we were coming off of the Royal Rumble, number one. Number two, Triple H was champion. He is a very familiar face to the wrestling crowd. And most importantly, The Rock, who is a movie star and known to the masses, put 26 minutes into last week's show. I made that clear. Thus, 4 million people, the rating was a 2.9. Fast forward this week, no Rock on the show, business back as usual. What happens? We go from the 2.9 back to the 2.3. We go from 4 million people back to the 3.3 million people. We lost about 750,000 people. Doesn't that tell anybody anything? Does anybody get that? Is anybody at the WWE trying to understand why did we draw 4 million people just last week and a 2.9 rating and 3.3 million people this week and a 2.3 rating? Does anybody understand why? I will tell you why. Because the mainstream tuned in last week to see Hunter again as the champion, but more importantly, The Rock That's what the mainstream audience knows. You go back to wrestling this week. As a matter of fact, a half an hour into the show, you tell us that there's no need to watch the main event because the main event is not a main event. There's nothing on the line. The tag titles are not on the line. There's no reason to watch this match. If you can't see this pattern and you can't understand, I don't know what to tell you. But I wanna explain what I took out of watching all the shows across the board this week. First and foremost, it's no secret when you go to the internet, most of the people that watch all these shows, I think the two shows that get put over the most are Lucha Underground and NXT. I think we can agree to that as far as the internet community is concerned. Why is that? I'll tell you why that is. The shows are an hour. They are an hour. After an hour, we've seen and had enough and have had our fill. Anything after that in wrestling in 2016, it gets drawn out and it just becomes more boring and more boring and more boring and more boring. TNA is boring at 2 hours. WWE is deathly boring at 3 hours. Lucha Underground, NXT, just enough. Lucha Underground is my favorite show. Because they dare to be different, because they do things that are different, because there is an effort put on characters. There is an effort put on these characters coming together and having a compelling storyline. There are episodes that take us outside of the wrestling ring into another world. They do all the things I like about a wrestling show. I watched NXT early in the morning. Listen, I think they got a couple great acts. I'll be honest with you. I love the packaging of the vaudevillians. I've always said that. The way their entrance combines with the way they work in the ring. They are characters. I love Enzo and Big Cass. I don't know why these guys are not in the WWE. And Bayley has the potential to be adored by millions and millions and millions and millions of little girls and teenagers around the world. The girl just eases personality. So there are some things that I like. But I think it was really Impact when I was sitting there and I'm really understanding what the problem is and what the problem has remained to be for years and years and years and years. I was telling them when I was there, I was telling them when I was consulting, and I'm telling them now. They don't change anything. And as we saw TNA already, 4 weeks in, the audience has already started to drop off when I know that they promised Pop TV they were going to do 1.3 million viewers, the same amount that they did at Spike. 4 weeks in, the numbers have already dropped at TNA, and I'll tell you why. When I'm sitting there watching TNA with a very open mind, I don't want to watch this show. I'm not a fan of this show. I don't enjoy this show, but I want to be able to watch it to bring constructive criticism to the table. And listen, man, I've had people, in the industry unfollow me because of the things I say. Let me tell you something, brother. If you're unfollowing me and I'm literally trying to help you, then you are in denial. If you can't take what I'm saying and try to understand what I'm saying, then block away. Because at the end of the day, that's not going to help your cause. What's going to help your cause is listening to somebody who's been there and done that and are seeing the obvious things. Here's what I saw when I sat back and I watched TNA. And I've seen this since the day I left TNA for the last 4 years. What TNA basically is you have a show that consist of wrestlers. They're not characters, they're wrestlers. And every week, these wrestlers show up to the wrestling building and they have wrestling matches. They're not human beings. They don't talk and act like human beings. Listen, in real life, I don't know if anybody at TNA knows this, so I'll smarten you up. In real life, people are not walking around with briefcases, okay? If I know I earned a shot at the TNA title, I earned a shot at the TNA title. I don't need to walk around with briefcases. In real life, outside of wrestling, people don't walk around in the back with briefcases looking like absolute freaking idiots. Only wrestlers do that. When wrestlers have dialogue, all they talk about is wrestling. That's all they talk about. I want to prove I'm better than you. I respect you, so I want to fight you. I want to beat you up because I'm mad at you. That's all it is. People in 2016, and for that matter, in our lifetime, don't act like wrestlers. Only wrestlers act like wrestlers. Listen, when you put on an episode of The Office, is Michael Scott sitting there 24 hours a day talking about The Office and how many paper reams we sold today? Or the appointments for the day, or the copy machine? Is that what The Office is? You know, is that what Always Sunny is? Is Always Sunny all about the bar? Are we always in the bar? Is the entire show shot in the bar? Or Mac and Dennis talking about making drinks for 30 minutes? Do you not see the difference? In other television shows, whether it's a bar, whether it's an office, that's the backdrop. The emphasis is put on the characters and the storylines, and you need to build characters in order for them to get in compelling storylines with each other, because it's things in their characters where the conflict is going to arise. When everything arises out of I'm mad and I'm going to fight you, the only people that are going to like this show are wrestling fans. Do you not understand that you're not going to grow the audience? TNA is a good wrestling show. It's a horrible television show. You know, right now I'm watching Shades of Blue, which I think is a great show. It's a Crooked Cops with Ray Liotta and J-Lo. They're not working in the office talking cop talk for the entire hour. They go home. They have families. They have other interests. They have hobbies. They have character traits. There are certain foods they like, certain foods they don't like. There is a whole other world outside of their freaking job. And some Nimrod this week tried to literally compare to me professional wrestling and professional sports. Chuck, professional sports are real. Wrestling is a television show. Pop TV wants TNA to get the highest ratings they can get, to bring eyeballs to the television network. They don't care how they do it. That's what they want. Here's your 2 hours. Bring as many people to us as Pop TV as possible. How many people are you going to bring if all we do is fight and argue and everything is in the ring and we're carrying cases around looking like jackasses? Then here's what they do. They try to label the characters. Okay, if we give you a name, that's your character. So we have the Miracle. Who is the Miracle? What is the Miracle? Unless the Miracle is walking on water, unless the Miracle is healing lepers, unless the Miracle is taking one loaf of bread and one piece of fish and feeding an entire army, what's the Miracle? Just because you call the guy the Miracle doesn't give him a character. What is he at the end of the day? He's a cocky, arrogant wrestler. You know, when EC3 was created, EC3 was created as the nephew of Dixie Carter, the entitled nephew. Well, Dixie's gone. So what is EC3 now? EC3 is an arrogant, cocky wrestler. They're all arrogant, cocky wrestlers. We get it. That's why 4 weeks in, your numbers have gone down, because we get it. You know, a new character, Rosemary. Rosemary's crazy. Why is Rosemary crazy? Because she puts makeup on her face. So that's why she's crazy. I've not seen her do anything crazy. We didn't set the table before we saw her that she's crazy. Before we ever saw Val Venus, he was with Jenna Jameson, and girls were going down on him in his automobile. We knew who Val Venus was before he got there, because he was a character. All right, next week, I'll tell you what. Maybe I'll do this show. I'll paint my face, and I'll come on here, and I'll say I'm crazy. And then that's my character. But listen, I'm going to make the comparison right now, because now I'm going to, before I jump to the WWE, I always call WrestleMania 3 a benchmark. WrestleMania 3 to me was a benchmark of professional wrestling, the 93,000 people, whatever it was, at the Pontiac Silverdome. No doubt the most anticipated main event in the history of the sport. Listen to the characters that were on this card, and then in your mind, imagine how all these different characters would have conflicts with each other, which create the storyline. Listen to some of the characters on the card. Hillbilly Jim, King Kong Bundy, Hercules, Junkyard Dog, Rowdy Roddy Piper, who did crazy things. Piper did not say he was crazy. He did crazy things. As I'm sitting here, it was yesterday, he hit Jimmy Snooker over the head with the coconut. As I'm sitting here, it's yesterday, he's hosing down Morton Downey Jr. with the fire extinguisher. Piper did crazy things. He didn't just say he was crazy. Adorable Adrian Adonis, the British Bulldogs, Coco Beware, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, the Macho Man Randy Savage, the Honky Tonk Man, Jake the Snake Roberts, the Iron Sheik, Nikolai Volkov, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Bobby the Brain Heenan. Do you understand? I just gave you a list of characters, and that's when wrestling was at its peak. Do you understand? Now, let me make the comparison today to today. Here's today's WWE superstars. Who are these people? Okay, I'm going to name a couple of them. Rusev, okay, a guy from Bulgaria. Okay, Sheamus, okay, he's the guy from Ireland. Barrett, okay, he's the guy from England. Becky Lynch, okay, she's the girl from Ireland. Neville, that's the smaller guy from the UK. Dolph Ziggler, he's the show-off. I guess you got to job matches in 9 out of 10 matches to be a show-off, because I don't know what Ziggler does that makes him a show-off. And again, for you people that think this is real, when I make a statement like that, it's not a shot at Dolph Ziggler. I am a huge fan of Dolph Ziggler. Dolph Ziggler doesn't write the show. My point is, they call him a show-off, but the character does nothing that points the finger to him being a show-off except lose matches. So I don't get the whole show-off thing. I got a great question for you. Who's the soon-to-be a champion Roman Reigns? What do we know about Roman Reigns? The only thing we really know about him is he's got a heritage in being Samoan. That's what we know. He's got a heritage. Rock's his cousin. The Usos are his cousin. That's what we know. Outside of that, what type of girls does Roman Reigns like? Is Roman Reigns, well, why? Okay, we know he's married because they showed us in one vignette that he had a little kid. But, you know, what makes Roman Reigns tick? What pisses Roman Reigns off? What makes Roman Reigns sad? What does Roman Reigns like to eat for lunch? What's Roman Reigns' workout regimen? What kind of people does Roman Reigns hang out with? We know nothing about Roman Reigns except that he comes out through the crowd and gets into the ring, and then we wonder why he's not over the way we want him to be over. Here's my favorite. The lunatic fringe, Dean Ambrose. And again, this is on the writers. This is not on the. Why is Dean Ambrose a lunatic? I watched Monday's show when Dean Ambrose came through the second rope like he always did. His opponent caught him, And Michael Cole goes all crazy about welcome to the Dean Ambrose asylum because the guy dove through the second rope and his opponent caught him. This makes Dean Ambrose crazy. This makes Dean Ambrose an insane person. Let me tell you something, Michael Cole. I'm 55 years old. I can come to the next TV taping tomorrow and dive through the second rope. I guarantee you, if the guy's standing there to catch me, I can dive through the second rope at 55 years old. There's nothing crazy about that. The only thing that's going to back that character up and make him crazy is if he does things outside of the ring. If he comes off a ladder, he's not crazy because millions of people have come off a ladder. If he puts somebody through an announce table, he's not crazy because millions of people have put other people through an announce table. That doesn't make his character. JBL, maybe we should change his name to John. I'm going to take a cheap shot at Russo Layfield. Well, John, I'm going to take a cheap shot at Russo Layfield. We can call Kevin Owens a prize fighter all we want. There is nothing he does in the ring or outside of the ring that tells us he's a prize fighter. So you can call me a female. Call me a female. Call me a female. Vince Russo's a girl. Vince Russo's a girl. Vince Russo's a girl. Vince Russo's a girl. Guess what? I'm not a girl. I'm a guy. It's the same with Kevin Owens. This guy's not a prize fighter. And the fact that you say it a million times isn't going to make him a prize fighter. There are no characters on this show. And when you build the characters and you build the unique characters and they're different in their ways, that's where the conflicts come with each other. Do you not understand that? I believe on this card, Jake Roberts had a match with the Honky Tonk Man. How hard is that to write because of what the material you have to work with their characters? How hard is that to write? But the fact that everybody is a wrestler, all they're capable of doing is having wrestling matches. And the only people that are going to watch are the wrestling fans. I get so upset because I'm very passionate about this. And it was done a certain way for decades and decades and decades and decades and decades. I had Bob Backlund on my show. I just interviewed Bob Backlund for the VinceRussoBrand.com. And he's telling me all these great stories about Vince McMahon Sr. That's how they did it back then. People ask me, Vince, why do you enjoy Lucha? It's the flip-flop flying and lack of psychology. I enjoy Lucha because that's always been the Lucha brand. That is their style of wrestling. They've always done it that way. Here in the United States, there was always psychology involved in matches. They made us believe it was a real fight. They've changed that. Now all we have are acrobats having wrestling matches with no characters. That's why you went from 4 million people to 3,300,000 in a week. There's no Rock. There's no Rock to pick on the people in the front row. There's no Rock to come out there 30 minutes and it had nothing to do with wrestling. Do you not look at that and understand? Or let me ask you a more important question. Do you just not care? Are you happy with the 3.3 million? We'll take that and we'll go home. Because if that's the case, then it's a whole different story. But you need to tell us that. Because if you don't care, then why am I going to care at home watching this stuff? It is business 101, people. We have a time slot. How do we bring the most people in to watch this show? And how you do that is by making it a variety of things with compelling characters, and the differences in the characters create the fiction and the fight. How hard is that to believe? All you people that hate Vince Russo and all you internet wrestling smarts, you argue with what I just said till the cows come home. And in the wrestling business, we will continue to see numbers go down that not only hurt the WWE, not only hurt my numbers, but hurt your numbers. The less people that watch wrestling, the less people go to the wrestling sites. Simple, 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 simple math. But you got a bunch of stubborn people. You got a bunch of egomaniacs in management just looking to protect their jobs, not wanting to bring in the right people to fix the problem because they're insecure about their own spots. So what's suffering for it? The wrestling business is suffering and the wrestling fans are suffering. That's what's going on. You know, you bring ascension to the WWE. Okay, we paint their faces and that's going to get them over. We paint their faces and that's going to make them characters. God, it's so frustrating being here and just watching week after week after week the obvious. I am trying to help. I don't get off on the critiques and the criticism. I was a wrestling fan years and years and years and years before many of you were even born. You didn't see the things I saw. You didn't see the greatness I saw. And I'll tell you what, from that WrestleMania beginning, the era, WrestleMania 1 to WrestleMania 3, guess what? 15 years later, we did the same exact thing with the Attitude Era. The same thing. We had compelling storylines, compelling characters that were plausible. In 2000, we had compelling characters, and those same compelling characters came together to create compelling storylines. 15 years later, you can do the same exact thing. You're not going to do the same thing by putting every freaking person out there in a pair of tights and just letting them wrestle. That's not the same thing. That's why nobody's getting over. The Miracle. What's the Miracle going to do next week? I want to see the Miracle. When the Miracle raises somebody from the dead, then he's the Miracle. That's it. Listen to what I'm telling you. Don't be so damn hard-headed and proud and Russo's a jackass and block me on Twitter. Listen to what I'm saying. This is absolutely free advice. If I didn't care about the wrestling business, I wouldn't give it. Hear me. This has been Vince Russo for Nuclear Heat. I'll be back here on Monday with my boys Sean and Raj. We'll critique Raw. And as always, you can catch me 6 days a week, VinceRussoBrand.com. This week, we got an interview with cheerleader Melissa, who's going to be on Lucha in the next coming weeks, and also Pete Gas of the Mean Street Posse, who, by the way, the Mean Street Posse versus Patterson and Briscoe beat Hulk Hogan versus Randy Savage in the ratings. How about that? Two 50-year-old men wrestling, Patterson and Briscoe, Rodney and Pete Gas, who did not have a clue. Their ratings were higher than Macho Man Randy Savage versus Hulk Hogan on Nitro. That is a fact. Look it up. Why? You want to know why? Because this story, this match over here had a story with characters. This match over here, Savage, Hogan, no fresh story. They had the match on merit alone. Okay, that was 15 years ago. 15 years ago. Two men by the name of Pete Gas and Rodney outdrew Hogan and Savage. Do I need to say anything more? Do I really need to say anything more? I'll see you next week.